CityCast DC is brought to you today by Jones Dairy Farm. They're a 7th-generation family-owned and operated meat maker with products like dry-aged bacon, all-natural sausage, and America's favorite center-cut Canadian bacon. I checked out the map on their website, jonesdairyfarm.com, and got back dozens of our grocery stores. You can get their sausage and pork, chicken, or turkey, and there are no preservatives, additives, MSG, nitrates, or fillers. Expect only fresh ingredients from Jones Dairy Farm, making breakfast better since 1889.
Today on CityCast DC, it's been the biggest political scandal of the year, and this week, things just got spicier. A DC Council subcommittee yesterday unanimously recommended expelling Ward 8 Councilmember Trayon White, saying he violated council ethics by allegedly receiving large bribes. Washington City Paper's Alex Coma was at the Wilson Building for the hearing, and then ran to a coffee shop next door to tell us what went down. Today's Tuesday, December 17th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. So, Alex, a subcommittee of the DC Council voted unanimously yesterday to recommend that Ward 8 Councilmember Trayon White be expelled from office. Who all is on this committee?
Well, everyone on the council except for Trayon White.
Surprise, surprise.
Right. Vince Gray has not been participating in council business because he says he's no longer healthy enough to. So it's 11 out of 13 members at the moment.
Was White actually present?
He sure was, and it really made for kind of an awkward scene. He chose to sit in the very front row, sort of an unusual reversal. He's normally on the dais, and instead he was just sort of given the stink eye to all his colleagues. He made a big show for the press to proclaim his innocence while he was there, with call it a dozen supporters or so. It was certainly an unusual scene, not one you're going to see very often in the Wilson Building.
So let's back up a little bit. For anybody just catching up, what exactly is White accused of doing?
He is under federal indictment on a single charge of bribery. Basically, the idea is that he agreed to accept something like $156,000 from a person who he didn't know was acting as an FBI informant. We don't know a ton about them, but we are reasonably certain that it is a person who has a variety of contracts for city business, often involving violence interruption work. And he was essentially asking Trayon White to help him win new business or maintain the business that he had, to take meetings and to, sort of get the status of where these contracts stood. And based on everything the FBI and now an independent investigation commissioned by the council has told us, it kind of seems like that's pretty much what he did.
So I want to talk about that investigation that you just brought up. I know that report came out last week. What did they find?
They, surprise, surprise, didn't find too much different than the FBI. This is a white shoe law firm, Latham and Watkins, that charged the council $400,000 to basically reiterate the work that federal investigators have done. They sort of colored in a few things around the margins. They corroborated some of what the FBI found in terms of, Trayon taking meetings with various city officials about the contracts and grants that this FBI informant was pursuing. One of the key things that the report found is that, Trayon, went the next step beyond what even the FBI knew, which is to say that, they knew that he had agreed to meet with government officials in the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services and the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. He had agreed to do that, but through looking through his email and texts and interviewing officials at both agencies, the Latham and Watkins investigators found that he actually followed up and asked specifically, hey, what are the status of these contracts? What are the status of these grants? So much so that some of these officials expressed confusion, saying, hey, wait a minute, this company doesn't operate in Ward 8. Like, why does he care about all this? And of course, now we have a pretty good suggestion of why. It's because he was getting, photographed taking large envelopes of cash from the person running this company. And crucially, the one thing they looked into that the FBI didn't is a question of residency, because they're looking into this from the perspective of the council's rules, not just did he, break the law. And the council rules, they say you got to live in the ward that you represent. And because, Trayon White was arrested in a portion of Navy Yard that is in Ward 6, outside an apartment that, by all accounts, he has been calling home for some time now, there were real questions about that. And the council report didn't come down on it 100% saying that he for sure lives outside of his ward. He does still own a home in Bellevue that he lists as his primary residence. But they found a ton of evidence that he's spending a lot of time, like many nights a week, at this Ward 6 penthouse apartment. They didn't say that they should kick him out over that, but it's certainly not helping his case these days.
So the picture has gotten a little more damning for him, it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't good to begin with. I think the facts stand pretty stark. As I said, it's not like the FBI is doing this on innuendo. They, literally have his messages with an informant where they're talking about how he needs money for his girlfriend to go on vacation, it was bad to begin with, and it has only gotten worse. And the key thing here is that the council has a process for this. This is sadly not the first council member who has been indicted on bribery charges. And so, they are trying to adhere as closely as they can to their rules so that he can't say he was treated improperly in any way. This is giving them cover for if they have to vote to kick him off the council, they can say, we dotted all the I's and we crossed all the T's, or we gave him every opportunity to defend himself, and the facts are what they are.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It's such a good point. This is just my opinion from watching the way that he has moved and acted throughout all of this. You mentioned sitting in the front row and giving people the stink eye. In my opinion, he is someone who absolutely, after the fact, would try to say something was improper, has happened, I am being unfairly targeted in some way. I just get that sense from him. That's just my opinion.
I think you're absolutely right about that. I mean, he has picked up the mantle of his political mentor and the former Ward 8 council member and mayor, Marion Ferry, who did this stuff all the time, said that he was being persecuted by, the federal government for all these things. It feeds into a narrative that's prevalent in the communities that Trayon White represents, that, the white federal government wants to take out Black elected officials. And they've got some good reason for believing that sort of thing based on the FBI's history, fair enough. But the evidence is, very stark. And I think that, several council members mentioned it in the hearing about this, saying, look, we want to hear if he's got an alternative explanation, let's hear it. And time and again, he turned down requests on 3 different occasions to offer defense. He's barely said anything in public. He's not really said anything in court. That's probably at the advice of his lawyers. But if he's got another explanation for what looks really bad, let's hear it. And we just haven't.
What did the council members have to say?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. They were pretty universal in condemning him today. I think all but 4 spoke to make it clear that they felt that expulsion was the only option that they saw available, because they could technically censure him or remove him from his committees, these other more interim steps. And it just really didn't seem like there's any appetite on the council to do any of that. I mean, a lot of them spoke about, how this has damaged public trust in the government.
Oh, yeah, I think that's actually a direct quote from Chairman Phil Mendelson.
This incident has damaged the public trust necessary for government to function well. Anything less than expulsion will not rectify the situation.
And I know that is a huge issue on their minds in this moment when Republicans are getting ready to take control of the federal government, getting ready to, take a closer look at DC's business. And I think the council members rightly perceive that they will use Trayon White as a, reason to bash DC and say it's corrupt or poorly managed or, not deserving to govern itself. And I think they're very sensitive to that suggestion. And the more that they can show they are taking swift action against him, the more they can try and combat those arguments.
Let's be real, lawsuits are not fun. But with Christopher Nace and the trial lawyers at Paulson and Nace, at least they're a little easier. Paulson and Nace is a DC law firm in every sense of the word. It was founded here in 1979. Partner Chris Nace is a local who cares deeply about the DC community, even serving on the board of the local branch of the Living Classrooms Foundation in his free time. Nace and his associates, Samantha Peters, John Reese, and Maya Perry, handle medical malpractice, wrongful death, and other complex injury cases. And they don't just settle every case. They'll go to court. They'll fight for you. Paulson and Nace has even been recognized as one of Best Lawyers' best law firms. So if you have been hurt or lost a loved one because of someone else's mistake or negligence, call Paulson and Nace for a no-obligation consultation. Visit www.paulsonandnace.com or call 202-463-1999.
Did you know in DC it's actually illegal to toss household batteries in the trash? Batteries have to be recycled, and Call to Recycle is here to help. DC's official battery recycling program has convenient locations all over the city where you can drop off all kinds of household batteries. Think AA, AAA, even those rechargeable ones. Just find the drop-off spot closest to you by going to calltorecycle.org/locator. That's with the number 2. So again, that's calltorecycle.org/locator. Because recycling your batteries isn't just the law, it also helps protect our environment and our community. So clear out that junk drawer and do a little good. Go to calltorecycle.org/locator today. The legendary Black Cat New Year's Eve Swing Ball is always the best night out of the year. Band leader Peaches O'Dell and her big band orchestra, that's an 11-piece orchestra, will offer everything from high-energy swing and Latin music to Art Deco novelty tunes. And because it's New Year's Eve, there'll be a bunch of surprises thrown in. Chances to be a guest conductor, prizes for best red lipstick, and a conga line you have to see to believe. With no dress code and a relaxed atmosphere, the Black Cat New Year's Swing Ball Party lets you dress however you want. And it's all just $35, making the Black Cat New Year's Swing Ball one of the best deals in town. Get tickets at blackcatdc.com. Just look for the New Year's Eve event. Again, that's blackcatdc.com. You mentioned the incoming administration. Do you think that some of the council members are feeling the heat with Trump coming in, all the different things that he said that he would like to do in terms of D.C.?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that hangs over everything that happens in D.C. government these days. The council has had to face facts that they're not going to have an ally in the White House, but rather an enemy. He's vowed to take over D.C. and reassert federal control of it. I'm kind of skeptical on how much he's serious about it, in the sense that you never know how serious he is about anything. But the people who are more serious are the Republicans in Congress, who just over the last 2 years have used every opportunity that they had to meddle in city affairs. And that is only going to increase, when they can't pass a law doing anything else that would affect the entire country. It's much easier to mess with DC, which has way fewer rights because we're, of course, not a state. They've already, in the last week, hauled the mayor and council chairman up before Congress to grill them about the budget and crime and all this. This will just be, one more thing. If there's a federally indicted council member, still in the government, you think that's not going to come up? I'd be surprised.
I would also be very surprised. I understand that council member Robert White was really speaking to the memory of Jack Evans, the council member who had to, I guess there's no other way to say it, resign in disgrace in 2020. He came up a few times during the hearing.
The council, unfortunately, has been here before. A few years ago, the council, including council member Trayon White, voted to recommend expelling former council member Jack Evans for violating council rules for personal gain.
What was Evans accused of doing?
Yeah, there are a lot of parallels here, and many people brought this up because I think they're all very much hoping that Trayon, in fact, I think Robert White said that he hopes that Trayon White does what Jack Evans did, which is resign before the council has to expel him.
When the council found that councilmember Jack Evans violated council rules, we all voted to approve the report and to recommend expulsion. After we voted to approve the report, like we're doing today, former councilmember Evans resigned. It is my hope that councilmember Trayon White will not see this process to the end, but will resign, seek whatever help he needs, because the work is hard and it is heavy.
So basically, Jack Evans was at the time one of just 2 council members with a job besides being a council member. He was essentially working as a lawyer and a consultant, and he had taken on a bunch of private clients, not really disclosed who those clients were, as he was busy voting on things that were affecting their bottom line. Council members essentially said that Jack was advancing the interests of people paying him without telling anybody about that, which they felt was a serious breach of trust. He was also kicked off his post as chair of the Metro Board of Directors over similar concerns that he was advancing the interests of private clients with a lot to gain from his influence and not telling anyone about it. It never led to him being indicted. Jack will be the first one to tell you that the FBI investigated him but never charged him with anything. But I think a big part of that was because he used to resign his office. And so that is why there is so much looking at Trayon, wondering, how much longer is he going to keep this up, facing years in federal prison the way he is right now?
So something I find so interesting about how White is moving through all of this is he's really making it about statehood, right? Like that's like one of his big defenses. He said like the DC Council can't say they want statehood and believe in democracy and at the same time override the will of 20,000 voters who voted just a month ago. #due process. That was a quote the Washington Post got from Trayon White via text. And so part of me is like, well, that sounds kind of ridiculous. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, I get the play he's going for, right? Like, it seems like he, like, is trying to make this point that, like, I was elected by the will of DC voters. Like, do you care about the will of DC voters or not?
And I think he is trying to seize on the fact that he's got 5 at-large colleagues on the council who represent the entire city, and that includes the same voters who still support him. Now, there are problems with making that argument, as I've written several times, because let's face it, in a general election, anybody with a D next to their name, whether they're charged with federal bribery or not, especially in the presidential year, is going to cruise to victory. And Trayon White, it's not like this was a competitive race. I mean, there was a Republican on the ballot and precisely no one else. I mean, that wasn't going to, be a serious contest, even with the things he's accused of. It's certainly worth saying there are a lot of people who still support him. There are a lot of people who feel he's being set up, who feel that he should be afforded his day in court before the council does anything. And I think that council members are sensitive to that. Many of them have to answer to the same voters. Especially the white members are sensitive about the optics of expelling the Black representative of the least served community in DC in Ward 8 right now. So, it's politics. They're sensitive to these concerns, and he is counting on that. I just don't know that it is going to be enough to save him at the end of the day.
Well, in light of all of that, do you actually think it is likely that we would see White resign?
He has shown no willingness to thus far. He has been defiant in all of his public appearances. That being said, Jack Evans was pretty defiant up until the moment he resigned and saw the writing on the wall. It really did feel as if Jack was going to try and stick it out until it became clear that so much of the council wanted him out. And I wonder whether, the show at the hearing will sort of send a similar message. Trayon, at a minimum, needs 2 council members to vote with him to save his job. It requires a 5-6 majority to kick him out. So, that means that if he is allowed to vote on it, and this is a matter of some dispute, he would need, 2 more people alongside him. If he's not allowed to vote on it, he needs to find 2 people to win a 10 out of 12 vote. I mean, either way, that is a tough road based on what we heard just in the early going here.
Is there any way that he could wind up back on the council?
Yeah, I mean, and we were talking about this with Phil Mendelson. There is nothing in the law that would prevent him from simply running in a special election that is created by his expulsion. That, if it happens, would probably happen sometime this summer. It needs to happen within 6 months of the vacancy being created. Jack Evans ultimately waited for the full race, opting against running in the special election. But, it's an easy path to follow. Unless he is convicted of or pleads guilty to a crime, then there's nothing barring him from elected office. And look, I mean, Ward 8 is where Marion Barry staged his political comeback after heading to jail. So, why not Trayon White?
So speaking of that, what we're talking about is an investigation into whether or not White broke council's rules. Later on in the new year, we're going to be talking about whether or not he actually broke the law. So what exactly is next in this whole process?
Part of the reason why, there's so much urgency for moving forward with the council portion of this is because the legal portion is moving quite slowly. That's to be expected in a high-profile case like this. The fact that Trayon White changed lawyers sort of midstream. He initially had private attorneys. He later switched to federal public defenders. And that has sort of delayed everything. He probably won't even go to trial until 2026 is the most recent decision at the court. And even then, that's going to take a really long time. Prosecutors have already said, with a high profile case like this, they're going to, need to find jurors who have never heard this case, never read or listened to, any of our news coverage about it so that they can be unbiased. That's going to be difficult. That's going to take time. So it may be a very long time before we find out whether to see a jury's ruling on all of this. I also wouldn't discount the possibility that he pleads guilty. I mean, as I said, a huge part of what the FBI tries to do in public corruption cases is just get the person in question out of office. And they will agree to a lesser sentence if the person involved says, look, I appreciate what I did was wrong. And the key thing here is Trayon White hasn't been sworn in for a third term yet. So, once that happens, his position, gets a lot stronger where he can say, look, I'm here for 4 years unless you convict me, unless you find a jury, which is no small thing to find a jury willing to, convict a popular Ward 8 council member. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see that happen, but it's all a long way off. And that's why you're seeing the council want to act right now.
What's the next step for council?
Yeah, so in January, I think January 28th, they're going to hold a hearing to essentially give Trayon White a chance to present his side of the story if he so chooses. Both sides can call witnesses. It sort of mimics a trial in that way. But Trayon White, as I said, has never offered anything as defense before. His lawyers are probably telling him, look, anything that you say out here, will absolutely come up if you eventually head to trial. So don't go, blabbing too much, essentially. So it's some question whether he'll actually talk. Then after that, I don't believe the council is going to vote during that hearing. I think they would probably wait until sometime in February. So that is, if it comes to it, when an expulsion vote would happen.
Well, Alex, I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this again pretty soon. Thank you so much for covering this and for being here.
That's my pleasure, always.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. And if you enjoyed the show, please consider becoming a member to help us keep covering breaking news like this. Just go to membership.citycast.fm, and we'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.